we have started seeing a lot more institutional entering. So we have started seeing more stable coin buying, right? And basically trying to have a bit more stable coin exposure. The other thing is, obviously, we're seeing large Fortune 500 companies buying BTC or stable coins, on their balance sheet. We see almost everyone saying that they're either looking to, build a blockchain or working on a private blockchain solution for their company on how to decentralize their data. So yes, we have Fidelity, we have BlackRock. We have seen a lot of conversations around tokenizing assets. BlackRock is obviously spearheading that effort. But yes, we are seeing a bit more acceptance than we've seen in the past.
Walk us through some of the regulational changes, because that has been a big criticism in recent years about the lack of regulation. So how have things changed?
So over the years, right, we heard large banks saying that, look, we cannot trade this asset because even though it's for us, it's just a ticker, right? We don't know how SEC or CFTC would treat it as, right? What has happened in past month or so is that SEC has literally, let go most of the enforcement tasks that were going after crypto companies. One, all of the SEC charges have been dropped against Coinbase, Immutable, MoonPay, all of the companies that were open. So that has changed this shift. Same thing with CFTC. They've tried to set up, co-working groups just to focusing on digital assets. So even if crypto or blockchain or Bitcoin as a whole doesn't get a special category under digital asset, it'll probably be just treated like another asset under SEC. Just the same investor protection, just one of the stocks that you could trade on the market.
Is that where you think we're going to go? Because I would think that's where the industry would like to be, right?
That's where the industry would like to be, absolutely. But we would see that's where it is headed. Yes.
Okay, so that's good news, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, is this administration perceived still as pro-crypto, or maybe they just don't care, and that's okay too?
No. Very pro-crypto.
Okay.
Very extremely. We had an industry conference here in New York last week, and not as big as Consensus or, a couple of others. And President Trump had a recorded message.
Yeah.
Yes, had a recorded.
We carried it.
Yeah. So we carry, exactly. So, and then, World Liberty Financial, the organization under him, they're buying tokens consistently. Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting, too, because if you're just looking at its performance year to date, still lower here, close to about 6%. So, I mean, what's the deal?
It's dead. I mean, honestly speaking, as hyped, I'd be very honest about this. As hyped, we have, as hyped we have basically done with the industry in past 3 to 4 months, right? Ever since the administration changed, we haven't seen new volumes come in. And we haven't seen new liquidity come in. We haven't seen a lot more large institutional just plug in and say, here's the capital, just go trade.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think at the end of the day, in months or so, everyone rather manage their own book than handing to like crypto native funds or plugging into.
All right, I don't know anything about this, and I take great pride in not knowing anything about this. I come from the day of trading blocks of stocks. Has the story kind of faded here for crypto? It feels like the momentum is maybe out of the story. We don't talk about it as much as we used to. I quote it, but when I quote it, like I'm quoting stocks and bonds, I feel like, should I even be quoting Bitcoin? Does it feel like the momentum's fading?
I think we're not as special as we used to.
Okay.
You're right there, but we're not as special as we used to. We were a hedge against inflation. We were, one of that digital asset that you could buy so your grandkids could be proud of it.
But like for the criticism against that being a hedge against inflation, I mean, that clearly didn't work in various instances over the last 3 years during the Fed's hiking cycle to try to tame inflation.
It worked in 2020 and it worked in early 2021. Right now, it's just following the macro, and which it shouldn't have. If it had followed its initial narrative, it was, we're an asset class of its own. Right now, we're just treated like another tech stock.